Here's something that might sound strange at first. The Honda CB400 for 2026 doesn't feel like a bike Honda needed to make. It feels like a bike Honda wanted to make. And that difference matters more than people think. When I first started digging into the CB400 2026, I expected the usual middleweight formula. Safe power, predictable design, no real personality. But the more I compared it to what's already out there, the more I realized Honda is quietly aiming at a very specific rider mindset here. This isn't a spec sheet flex bike, and it's definitely not trying to chase the naked bike arms race. What surprised me was how restrained it feels in a good way. I kept asking myself one question while looking at this bike. Who is this actually for? Because if you're chasing max horsepower, this isn't it. If you want the lightest, wildest, most aggressive thing, also not it. The CB400 feels like it's designed for riders who were tired of being shouted at by their motorcycles. When I compare it to bikes like the KTM 390 Duke or even Yamaha's MT lineup, the difference is clear. Those bikes want your attention all the time. Sharp lines, sharp throttle, sharp attitude. The CB400 doesn't beg, it waits. And that's very Honda. One thing most people miss is how important the engine character is here. On paper, the CB400 doesn't look dramatic, but when you think about how Honda tunes engines, you start to see the intention. Smooth delivery, predictable torque, and an engine that doesn't punish you for being human. I noticed Honda didn't chase extreme numbers, and that tells me this bike is more about rhythm than adrenaline. You ride it daily, you live with it, you trust it. That's a different kind of appeal. A big misconception is that the CB400 is just a beginner bike. I don't buy that. Beginners can ride it, sure, but that's not the full story. This feels like a bike for someone who already knows what chaos feels like and doesn't want it anymore. Someone who's done the fast bikes, the loud bikes, the bikes that look cool but exhaust you. This one feels settled. Here's a practical takeaway if you're considering it. If your riding involves traffic, uneven roads, real-world speeds, and long ownership, the CB400 starts making more sense than flashier options. It's the kind of bike you don't rush to sell. Another detail that stood out to me is the design direction. Honda didn't overstyle it. The CB400 2026 looks clean, almost conservative, but not boring. It's the kind of design that ages slowly. 5 years from now, it'll still look right. That matters more than trends. I compared it mentally to older CB models, and there's a clear lineage here. Upright posture, neutral ergonomics, nothing extreme. You're not leaning on your wrists, and you're not stretched out either. That balance is hard to appreciate until you ride every day. Most people don't realize how tiring aggressive ergonomics become over time, and Honda knows that. One thing I questioned at first was whether the CB400 feels too safe. I'll be honest, that doubt was there. Safe can sometimes mean dull. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized Honda isn't trying to excite you every second. They're trying to keep you riding. There's a difference between excitement and satisfaction. Another misconception I keep seeing is that this bike lacks soul because it's refined. I disagree. The soul here is subtle. It's in how predictable the throttle is, how the bike behaves when you're not riding perfectly, how it forgives small mistakes without making you feel stupid. That's real-world soul. If you're the kind of rider who enjoys smooth corner exits more than wild acceleration, you'll understand this immediately. Here's another practical insight. The CB400 is the kind of bike that teaches you to ride better, not faster. It rewards clean inputs, smooth braking, thoughtful throttle control. It doesn't mask your riding with brute force. That's rare now. I also noticed Honda didn't overload it with gimmicky tech, and honestly, I respect that. Enough electronics to keep things controlled, but not so much that the bike feels like it's riding you. For many riders, especially those upgrading from smaller displacement bikes, this balance is ideal. You grow with it instead of outgrowing it. I compared it in my head to the CBR line too, and that comparison is interesting. Where the CBR wants to prove something, the CB400 doesn't. It's confident without being loud, comfortable without being lazy. That's maturity in motorcycle form. One mistake people make is assuming maturity equals boredom. That's usually said by riders who don't ride very often. If you ride daily, maturity becomes a feature, not a flaw. Traffic, weather, bad roads, long days, the CB400 feels built for that reality. If you're deciding between this and something more aggressive, ask yourself one honest question. Do you want a bike that impresses people at a stoplight, or one that still feels good after an hour in the saddle? That answer changes everything. What I personally like most about the CB400 2026 is that it doesn't try to be everything. It knows its lane and stays there. In a market obsessed with extremes, that restraint feels refreshing, and maybe even brave. This is the kind of motorcycle you don't fall in love with instantly. You grow into it, and one day you realize you trust it completely. That's not a dramatic ending, but it is a very honest one. And honestly, that's exactly what I think Honda was aiming for.